Good evening, everyone, or good afternoon. This is Frank Messina, and I welcome you to the December 1st, 2020 meeting of the Chatham Historical Commission. There's a few announcements we have to make. Please note that this meeting is being recorded. As I turn my phone off, please note that this meeting is being recorded and will be available shortly thereafter for scheduled and on-demand viewing on any smartphone, tablet, or computer. If anyone else is recording the meeting, please notify the chairman. I see no one raising their hand. Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, General Law 30A-18, and the governor's March 23, 2020 order imposing strict limitation on the number of people that may gather in one place, this meeting of the Chatham Historical Commission is being conducted via remote participation. No in-person attendance, members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceeding as provided in the order. A reminder for a person who would like to listen into this meeting while it's in progress may do so by calling the number 508-945-4410. The conference ID is 946-550-234 hashtag. Despite our best efforts, we will not be able to provide real-time access, and will post the record of this meeting on the town's website as soon as possible. Okay. Bear with me while I turn my phone off, and that doesn't happen again. Thank you very much. We'll begin meeting by roll call. Bob Lear.
Right, yes, here.
Mr. Lear is present. Sandy Porter. Not here. Ben.
Here.
Stephanie.
Here.
Jane. Not here. Don Aikman.
Here.
Thank you. Steve Burlingame. Not here. And Erica. Not here. So, and the chair, Frank Messina, is present. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 members present, so we can proceed. Okay. We have a relatively short agenda compared to last week. We only have one hearing, one application, which we will get to in a minute. Let's start with the minutes. We have the minutes of November 17, 2020. Any comments, corrections, deletions to the minutes of November 17, 2020? Hearing none?
They look,
This is Steph. I move that we accept the minutes of from November 17th, 2020.
Thank you very much. The second, please.
Second, Ben.
Thank you, Ben. All right, roll call on the minutes if there are no further comments. Bob,
yes,
Ben,
Yes.
Steph,
Yes.
Don,
yes,
and the chair votes yes. Okay. That was easy. As I indicated, we only have one hearing, and we'll proceed with that. It's application 20036 to be heard in accordance with Chapter 158. And it's for a partial demolition or changes on the structure 66 Happy Valley Road. And before we start, I guess I will observe there's no Form B on this property. And Michelle, was it included in the survey? Michelle, do we have you? Somebody has their microphone on. Would you shut it off until you're recognized, please?
Hi, Frank. I'm sorry. I lost my screen for a minute. There is no Form B. It is on the no list as the survey.
All right, thank you.
Mhm.
All right. Having said that, I guess we have the applicant and the owner here. Mr. Little, are you presenting?
Okay, all right.
Yes, Mr. Messina, I will start off. So David Little from Ryder and Wilcox, along with Peter Mann and Rich Warrengel, the architect.
Are you talking to us on your phone?
Can you hear me without my phone?
Yes.
Yes, because I do not have a connection with Microsoft Teams over my computer for my microphone. It's not working for some reason.
Frank, this is Allie. I just muted Mr. Little on his computer so he can continue to talk on the phone.
Thank you very much, Allie. Okay.
Thank you very much.
All right. The first issue here, before you make a presentation, the way we operate and the way we work is that reviewing the subject property, I thank your application, nice application, well done. At this particular point, we seem to be able to understand, but the first question is really rather basic to us, is consideration of whether or not we consider the structure 66 Happy Valley Road to be historically significant. So at this particular point, I don't know if the applicant has any comments relative to whether or not the home is in fact historically significant in accordance with our criteria. And at this point also, I would ask any members of the board if they have any comments as to the structure, as defined, if it's historical significance.
Frank, this is Bob. I have a clarity question. Allie, can you bring up page A3? No, I was afraid I don't have a color copy, and it was somewhat unclear from the expression here, or how it was expressed here, as to exactly what is the old portion of the house. Is that?
If I may, Mr. Messina, I can help out in that regard. This is David Little.
David,
Okay.
is it the kitchen and the bedroom? Is that it?
So we provided an 8.5 by 11 photograph of the all four sides of the house. Do you have that available to bring up on the screen, Allie?
Bob, do you have that?
I believe so. It's P1, David?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
So if you look at the four existing elevations of the house,
Right.
Rich has placed a red dot on the northern L of the existing dwelling. That's the portion of the dwelling that's closest to Happy Valley Road.
Okay.
That was the old structure originally built in 1933. And then later on, in 2001, the entire house was renovated, as well as that L, with a building permit from the town. So that being said, we are not touching the northern L of the existing dwelling. That is remaining as it exists with the double hung windows as shown in the photograph. Nothing is changing. What we are doing is adding on to the westerly end of the building that was constructed in 2001. So I can't answer your question as to how you define historical significance, but I can say that that L was originally built in 33, but it was renovated in 2001.
And the 2001 added on, well, you can tell me the pictures, or is that the living room and the porch?
it added on the living room, bedroom, and screen porch. The original structure had 2 bedrooms and a kitchen and a living room in it, the original 1933. And I included a highlighted 8.5 by 11 page showing that as well in the application.
Yeah, that's oriented in a different direction. So I was trying to turn it upside down and over and everything else to try and figure it out. That's my problem, but you've clarified it.
All right, well, thank you. You know, the issue here, Mr. Little, is that if we find the home to be historically significant, then we continue. If we make a determination that the home in question is not historically significant, there's no further action by the commission. So what I'd like to do at this particular point, being we attempted to clarify what was the original, not the original, is get some comments from the members as to your feeling relative to the historical significance criteria. I'll start backwards. Don?
Frank, I don't find anything historically significant in this property.
Okay, thank you. Stephanie?
I just have one question. When you say that it was completely revised, does that mean it was torn down more, or the walls were left, or what?
No, the interior was renovated and new double hung windows were put in, and it was re-sided.
Thank you.
Steph, any comments relative to historical significance?
I'm not sure there is much historical significance.
All right. Ben?
I don't think it's historically significant.
Thank you. Mr. Lear?
Well, from the fact that I couldn't tell what the original part was, I think whatever is there has been lost, so not significant.
I would tend to agree that, you know, just as our preservation consultant, Eric Dre, listed as a no, you know, whatever was there as a cottage from the 30s is kind of gone in terms of architectural content. And the last time I checked, George Washington didn't sleep there. So I concur. I don't think this property is historically significant. We seem to have consensus. Mr. Lear, would you give me an motion?
I will. I move the Chatham Historical Commission find that the building located at 66 Happy Valley Road is not historically significant because it does not meet any of the definitional criteria in section 158-2 A, B, or C of the bylaw. Therefore, the commission does not impose a demolition delay.
Steph, I'll second.
Thank you, Steph. Roll call, Mr. Lear,
Yes.
Ben,
Yes,
Stephanie,
Yes.
Jane, excuse me, Don,
Yes,
and the chair votes yes. Mr. Little, basically at this particular point, you can proceed because the commission does not find the property to be historically significant, and therefore we have no role in the process relative to what you are attempting to do. We appreciate the application, and hopefully in the future there might be a different procedure which would potentially preclude you having to make a full application to the commission for that determination. But at the present time, this is the process and the procedure. So Mr. Mann and Mr. Little and your architect, by the way, I like your software program and how it shows what is or is not in there. So I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Messina, and thank you, everyone.
Okay,
Thank you. Bye now. Have a good day.
very good. Thank you.
Frank, this is Steve Burlingame.
Yes.
I'm here. No one has let me into the meeting yet.
I'm sorry.
No one has let me into the meeting yet, but I do see you on my phone.
No, I'm sorry, Steve. We did not hear you saying you're attending when we did the roll call.
I was not on at that point.
Okay, well, you're here now, and you can then join us as an alternate in replacing Sandy and or Jane. So you can continue to vote. not, and I think we're done, but we can proceed. All right,
Is someone going to let me into the meeting?
you're in the meeting.
Okay,
I see your name, and
okay,
I see your picture. So if you would turn off your video, that would be appreciated.
okay.
Sorry, we didn't see you earlier, Steve.
Looks
That's
like
okay.
it's the ceiling or something.
I'm not offended.
No, okay. All right, let's go. The next item on our application is on the new business is a application for a request for support CPC application. It is submitted by Miss Ellen Briggs of the POP, Protect Our Past. Miss Briggs, are you here?
I am.
Okay. Are you making the presentation?
I can. Stuart wrote it and he's with us. So why don't we ask Stuart to do that?
Frank,
Frank.
this is Steph. May I ask a question?
Yes, Steph.
How did you get this form?
You're asking that of Ellen?
Well, I'm asking anybody. I'm just trying to find out how you're getting forms when they haven't gone to CPC yet.
No, the process here, Stephanie, I actually, after I spoke to you today, I spoke with Michael Thompson, the chair, and although he has not called a meeting of the committee yet, he intends to, at least according to him, and we'll be calling a meeting, sometime in December, in recognizing, I think you have a June 15th deadline for submission of CPC applications.
I know
And
the Atwood House is applying also, but I don't know where their application is.
I'm sorry?
The Atwood House is applying for an application too.
It hasn't been submitted to us. As our representative, if you don't mind letting the Atwood know that they need to get in touch with Michelle and get on our agenda. We have one more meeting in December, so
Okay.
we can facilitate. We did do we had one last week, 2 weeks ago, on the from the Nickerson, and that has gone forward. We'll be going to Mr. Thompson relative to our review and consideration of the application. Okay, going backwards again, Stuart, Mr. Green.
Frank, Bob, can I just intervene with
Go right ahead.
Well, just to let you know, disclose that the secretary of this organization is my wife, so. I do not have any financial interest in it, though.
All right, thank you very much. I appreciate that. Mr. Green, Stuart, you want to proceed?
Stuart, do you want to unmute your audio? If he can.
Mute.
There he is.
That's better. So the format of this follows the electronic version, but because we haven't formally submitted it, we wanted for this committee to have something that was at least readable. And it was easier to type it in a clean fashion. So I apologize if it's not on the original, but if we filed the original, I think we would have to formally submit it. The purpose of this meeting was to kind of have a review and see if any changes needed to be made before we did submit it.
That's no problem. We understand.
Okay. So we're asking for a total of $32,694 in CPA funds. This represents 2/3 of the total budget that we would require. The total budget for 3 films was going to be $49,200. It was the best estimate from a producer who has substantial experience. a fellow who has been a producer for CBS. His name is John Jacobian, and I believe he's a Chatham resident. Ellen Briggs, who is our CEO, has media experience, and she reviewed this. So we followed the direction. We provided the project description. It does seem to conform to the town's long-range comprehensive plan preface. We're concerned that Chatham is falling victim to development forces, which deteriorate its uniqueness and turn it into any place USA. That's word for word. We also reference section 5 relative to the historic preservation community character from the long-range comprehensive plan. There was reference to the community character being fragile, that homes are disappearing, and that the town's goals and priorities and policies were to enhance the historical and cultural assets. So we feel that this is within the spirit and perhaps the wording of the purpose for which we're applying. We reflected on the number of homes that are being destroyed, which have historical value. We've discussed the mission of POP, which is basically to identify the value of maintaining historical elements in a community, assessing the social and environmental consequences of the destruction of historical properties while dispelling misinformation leading to objections, and coordinating collective voices for change to save historic buildings. We noted that the board is made up of noted preservationists, historic preservation consultants, active and retired business executives, so on and so forth, people with hundreds of years of experience and knowledge about local history. We discussed following this the creative team that POP is assembling to produce the documentary films that are seeking to stir the awareness in the community about the consequences of loss, to encourage the town leaders and thousands of full-time and part-time residents to save historic properties, which exemplify time, place, and who we are. We followed that with a summary of the principal biographies of the main members of the creative team. We go into the 3 proposed videos. One would be on the Chatham Coast Guard boathouse. The other would be on the circa 1768 Shell Drive barns and house. And the third would be on the Monomoy Theater compound. We talked about the objectives, the specific objectives to stir awareness in the community by documenting on film the consequences of loss, to encourage the town and its full-time and part-time residents to save historic properties, which exemplify time, place, and who we are. Without historic homes, we feel Chatham loses its historic character, which is responsible for waves of tourism every summer and during the holidays. And we also are using film as a way to get the widest possible audience using today's technology. It's also the most cost-effective means of distribution to get the message out. POP hopes to influence and engage many Chatham residents in a thorough examination of the state of protection of historic structures. And we're hoping to distribute this not only through the POP website, but through social media, through the Orpheum Theater, through libraries, museums, and schools for the general public to access. Which of the following goals of the CPA does this project address? Basically 2. POP is using the power of media as a restoration tool to accomplish the following: the acquisition, preservation, rehabilitation, and restoration of historic resources, as well as the rehabilitation or restoration of such open space, historic buildings, or community housing that's acquired or created with CPA funds. Then we go on to talk about the impact on Chatham's residents. We talk about the current status, which shows that there's a stock of historic homes diminishing at a rapid point. We talk about the problem of the town losing its character, potentially the loss of tourism, and unless the public is made aware and understands the value and loss of these homes, we won't be able to recover them. Once gone, they're lost forever. We estimate the target or number of people to be observing this to include full and part-time residents, not only in Chatham, but in surrounding towns. We will reach people through multiple internet social media avenues, including YouTube. Protect Our Past will reach out to its own mailing list, as well as of individuals and preservation organizations, historical societies, museums, schools, libraries in Chatham and beyond. And there, we've come up with several measures of success for this project. The first would be the number of viewers to the Protect Our Past website and multiple social media platforms, including Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest, and YouTube. Second, the number of viewers at schools, museums, libraries, and theaters. Third, the potential changes in laws protecting the wanton destruction of historic homes and buildings. Fourth, the number of homes that gain status on the National Register of Historic Places. 5, the number of articles and publications that result from this new consciousness of the value of historic properties. And then finally, 6, the diminishing number of demolished historical homes in Chatham. We follow this with the projected action plan and timeline. We hope to begin the films within 1 year of receipt of funding. The timeline would be beginning in July 2021, begin the videography and still photography. May to June of 2022, often online editing. July of September 2022, begin the distribution in the library, schools, museum, social media, and pop website. Below this, we've itemized the budget, $6,000 for videography based on 40 hours times $150 an hour. Still photography, 4 hours times $100 an hour. The hard drives, $1,000. Often online editing, 50 hours at $150 an hour for a total of $7,500. And then the graphics at $1,500. So the total to make one film is $16,400. The total for the 3 films would be 3 times that, or $49,200.
Okay.
Looking to other resources, we would go to private donors, memberships, foundations, fundraising events, and the use of volunteer time, of which we have a number of experts. The financial sustainability would be largely based on the town money plus these other sources. The annual cost, once the project is operational, would be also basically in-kind or contributions from memberships, etc. The cost of the town, once the funding is gained, would be zero in subsequent years. So there would be no carryover responsibility for costs. The potential revenue from the project, we're not going to charge for these films. as we make them available to the general public. So the revenue would, if there is any, would come from sources directly recruited by POP. What entity will collect and control future revenue? It'll be POP. We don't anticipate charging for the films, as I said. We're a nonprofit organization. The basis for the budget, we estimated the costs based on the CBS producer and POP board member, John Jacobian, who has quite a history in television and films. We also have Ellen Briggs, our CEO and founder of POP, who has media experience and is careful in her review. Are there any legal ramifications? We don't believe so. However, we would like to get the town's permission to give screen credits on the films to the Chatham Preservation Committee for its financial support. Is this project compatible with the town's comprehensive plan? I believe we stated so in the beginning, in the preface. There's concern for turning Chatham into any place USA. We also reference Section 5, historic preservation and community character, the threats to tearing down the old, the need to preserve community character. Do you have the authorization of the property owners? Yes, we have authorization from the owners to conduct the filming on all three buildings. Do you have a supporting letter from the town board committee? We hope this to be in progress. We don't at the present time. And finally, what's your assessment of the nature and level of community support? We believe the evidence points to a very strong community support. For example, we recently received over 800 signatures in Chatham on our 10-day petition drive to save 68 Shell Drive. Additionally, since POP was formed, multiple members of the community have stepped up to support POP's mission and projects and have recognized the value of media as a tool in support of preservation and restoration. Our POP board is diverse, committed, and has been involved in a number of important Chatham and out-of-state historical restoration projects. Several members of POP now sit on historical boards or advisory committees and/or have contributed substantial amounts of time to several non-profit organizations in town. And that's the end, Mr. Chairman.
All right, well, thank you very much. I appreciate it. Very comprehensive application, but you know, this is going to be a hard sell, and I'll tell you why. The Community Preservation Committee, I mean, I agree, it's a worthwhile project, and I would support it. But you know, you asked for our advice, and I think, you know, I can give you at least 5 or 6 areas. The fact that we're not asking for money to restore a particular property or a building, which is normally what CPC applications have been used for. They have in the past supported soft applications, and the one experience this board has with it was when we got to be 10 years ago, maybe longer. I think Don and I are the only ones on the board left when we obtained significant funding to write and publish a book, Sense of Place. You know, and the number of things fell out of that, because this is very similar. What you're doing here is you're asking for money to try and advance the concept of historic preservation, which is laudable and absolutely correct as far as I'm concerned, consistent with the town's long-range master plan, the comprehensive master plan, as well as it's consistent with the objectives of the Chatham Historical Commission, which is more, you know, as education is part of it. So you've got to be sensitive to that. I would also, you know, you need to understand on your applications, when we did the Sense of Place book, it was very clear there would be no income from the book, which would come back to the Historical Commission. all income from the book had to go back to the town. I mean, you know, you're spending taxpayers' money to do this film. So you got to make it very clear that if there is any income, the income comes back to the town of Chatham, not to yourselves, in my opinion, but that's up to them to decide.
Okay.
You know, that's just you know, be careful about that. Are you nonprofit? Do you have your nonprofit certification?
We have it in progress, and we're currently receiving support from another organization which does have the 501c3. I have their letter from the IRS regarding their determination. They've traditionally acted in this role for other companies that are making films.
Okay. It's not, you know, it's not mandatory. You know, a for-profit group can ask for funding, but I think it enhances your application if you are a nonprofit or using it. And the other thing, just quickly, as we're going through it, you need to address who owns this thing when you're done. Technically, when you use community preservation funds to do a project, there's a preservation restriction or you know, sharing. So that's an issue which I think, you know, you have to address with them. You know, from our perspective. I'm sorry, I wanted to give some quick comments, which I noted, you know, as you were presenting the film, as you're presenting the application. So I'm generally supportive of you, but let me stop talking a minute and see how the other members of the commission feel. Mr. Lear?
As you might anticipate, I support this proposal.
Very good. Ben?
Yeah, I support it also.
Okay, Stephanie?
I have one question. Has the Monomoy Theater compound been looked at lately? Are they still cooperating with us?
Well, I don't know what you mean by us.
Are they still cooperating with letting this group film their theaters?
Stuart?
Yes, I believe so, Ellen.
Yeah, I'll answer that. We are going back and Greg and John, the producer, and I have been working on finding a time to meet. He's well aware that we want to do the story of the Monomoy Theater. He's just part of it. We'll be covering the beginning, middle, and whatever the end is. So we don't have to have his permission, but we want his permission to follow the story. We're not here to tell him which way he should go. That's not our position. We're just presenting the story as is. So he's well aware, and I have talked to him in the past. We just haven't talked recently.
Thank
Ellen,
you.
Ellen, one comment, and Steph, I think you, in your application or in your presentation to the CPC, I mean, you asked for comments. We're pretty easy giving comments. Is that I think you've got to make the point that, you know, what's the story that you're telling? The elevator speech. In other words, in one paragraph, you know, what's the story about the boathouse and what's the story about the 68 Shell Drive? So just so people understand that, Stephanie asked the question, do you have his permission? Well, that seems to intimate that you're doing a story of what it will be. Well, that's not necessarily what you're doing here. You're telling a story about the process. So anyway, just a comment.
Right. That's good input. Thank you.
I will support it. Steph speaking.
Thank you very much, Steph. Don?
Right. I personally do not believe this is an appropriate application for community preservation. This is creating something, and as you said in the very beginning, it's preserving something, but I don't think this fall under the appropriateness of CPA. I would suggest that maybe town council should be asked whether he thinks that this is appropriate for CPA.
Well, I think you bring a very good point, Don. I mean, I think we had, as I said, I started to say in the beginning, or at least I alluded to, when we went to CPC, for the Sense of Place book, it was a hard sell. And, but we were successful. And I think Ellen and Stuart have to recognize, Don's comment is that, yeah, it's a great idea and we'd love for you to do it, but is this truly in accordance with the Community Preservation Act? And that's something that the town council is probably going to have to opine. I love that word. And I'm sure the CPC will go to the Community Preservation, what's it called, Don, is the group that oversees the CPC.
Coalition.
The coalition. Thank you very much. So, it's very possible that there have been examples, and a suggestion, Ellen, would be to go to the website of the coalition and see if other communities or other CPCs have funded this kind of an event. This is different. I'm making the analogy that I think this is similar to the Sense of Place book. The purpose of the Sense of Place book was to get positive information out to the public on our history and why we should save these historic homes. So, Don, I agree with you. I'm concerned about it, but I still personally would support it. Steve, how about you? Mr. Burlingame?
I know that there are a number of considerations in terms of the content of the film, to the extent that if it is largely these three projects, the boathouse, the theater, etc. I would suspect that since you're talking of a timeline of 18 months before this documentary is available, a lot of those things, a lot of those projects will be complete one way or the other. They'll either, the boathouse will be in place somewhere or it won't be. The theater project is not going to wait a year and a half before something is done. So I suspect before your year and a half, that's going to be an old tale. And if the documentary is about those items, then they may be more historic than they are something worth saving. It might have been an example of something that was worth saving, and perhaps it was, but I think that's got to be cautious about that content.
Okay. I think we've got a good sense of the commission on how we are. So the issue at this particular point, without belaboring it, unless anybody has any specific comments or suggestions, which is what we do, in fact, I just wrote off a letter today to the CPC, the commission's support for the Nickerson Family Association. And that's what the applicant is looking for. He's looking for us providing a letter of support or non-support to the Community Preservation Committee. So at this point, I think it's appropriate if we get a motion to support and let's see where the vote goes.
Frank, it's Don.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
If the applicant were to go to the coalition website, it says in general, a rule of thumb is that CPA can fund projects that deal with tangible historic resources, but not with historic interpretation, education, or highlighting awareness of history. So I think it's a issue that should be considered by town council.
I would agree with you, Don, but I would also say, you know, the coalition has no, it's not a legal body. It's just a group, okay? And it's their interpretation. When I was the vice chair of the Community Preservation Committee, I often said, the way this act is written, you can drive a 10-ton truck through it. So the actual act is written in such a way that it is up to the community to decide, you know, what it wants to spend the money on. And I think if you look at all the towns in the state of Massachusetts, there's a wide variety of how money is spent. And what one community may decide they don't want to do, another community may decide they want to. So, you know, I think personally, I support the concept, just as we had a hard sell on getting him to fund the Sense of Place book, which I think turned out to be a very positive thing for the community. And I'm not disagreeing with you, Don, but again, that's the coalition's opinion. I think, Stephanie, do you have your hand up?
I took it down.
Oh, okay. I see someone with an S with a hand up. Oh, there you go. Thank you. All right. Mr. Lear, could you give us a motion so we could dispose of this one way or the other?
Yes, I move that the commission recommend that the chair send a letter to.
We just had a next time, Chet. Thank you.
You're welcome. And
Frank, does it go, or Michelle, does this go to Dr. Thompson or does it go to Alex?
It goes to Dr. Thompson, and then we carbon copy everybody.
Okay. I move that the chair sends a letter to Dr. Thompson with appropriate copies supporting the proposal by CPC for their project.
As delineated.
As delineated. Yeah, I was looking for a title, but that's fine. As
Yeah,
presented
the
to the
title
commission.
is, yeah, Homes for Historic Houses. Yeah. Okay. Do we have a second?
Frank, before you do, I think it might be more appropriate if I made that motion so that Bob Lear's name doesn't appear on it, considering the fact that his wife is involved with the project.
I withdraw my motion. Thank you, Steve.
Okay. Can I get a motion, please?
I just repeat the motion.
Very good. Do we have a second?
Jeff Hamilton, I'll second.
Thank you very much. Okay, we're going to do a roll call. Mr. Lear?
Yes.
Ben?
Yes.
Stephanie?
Yes.
Don?
No.
Steve?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Okay, so it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to 1. Okay. Well, Stuart and Ellen, we try to give you comments or hopefully suggestions. I would ask that if you decide to modify your application in any way before you submit it, that you send a copy back to Michelle so we have it.
Will do. Thank you very much. We took copious
Thank
notes.
you.
I appreciate your input very much.
Thank you very much. Okay, guys, let's move along here. We're almost 1 hour, but we're doing well. At this particular point, on a new business, Michelle has put out to you gentlemen and ladies a copy of our proposed meeting schedule for 2021. It's just, what I'd like to ask people, I know I'm not heading to Florida this year. If anybody's taking an extended vacation, to let us know. And if any particular date is a problem, this is the current calendar. The one thing which we wanted to discuss and to just let people know, we did have questions about time change, and I took a brief poll, and it looks like we want to go back to our morning meetings, and 2:30 is providing too much of an issue for people. So Michelle has did research, and we're going to stay at 2:30 in 2020. We have one more meeting, but in January of 21, we will continue to meet at 2:30 until the Channel 18 department can support a 9:30 meeting. I've had discussions with the staff, and they agreed that when they make some staff changes, I think there's an addition, they can possibly accommodate us to start at 9:30. So in the meantime, we will continue at 2:30 in 21. And when and if we are notified, we will move to a 9:30 starting time, which seems to be convenient enough for them when they get the staff to support it. I mean, we're kind of at the mercy of the Channel 18 and the IT department as we are continuing in this issue of virtual meetings. Is there any questions or comments or discussion? Hearing none, we'll move on. Old business. Ally, you're on. First, no business is the discussion of the potential zoning bylaw to enhance historic preservation. Now, we discussed this at our last meeting, and there was a meeting of Ally and the staff, which was Katie Donovan, Sarah Clark, zoning, Michelle, and Jay Briggs. So at this particular point, I'd like Ally to kind of go through and where we are. There's two issues. We're going to look at some of the issues that we've changed to make it more consistent to what staff feels we can and should proceed with. And secondly, then we're going to discuss briefly the next step in the process. Ally?
Thanks, Frank. So I just shared my screen. Let me know if you can see it.
Can you make it larger? At least.
Yep. Yeah. Is that better?
It's much better.
Okay.
It's an eye test.
I know, it's hard. So yeah, so the last
Excuse
time...
me, one second, Ally, I interrupt you, I apologize. You know, ladies and gentlemen, I believe I sent everybody a copy of this yesterday, so you should have it.
Frank, this is Steph. I have it, but I can't print it. So
Okay.
I'd like a clean copy.
All right, well, Ally's going to continue, with, on the screen, so hopefully that'll help us.
Okay.
I'm sorry, Ally.
No problem. So the last time I was here was about 2 weeks ago, and I went through this potential bylaw very, very quickly. So I'm back again after some more discussion internally with staff with the draft bylaw for the commission to consider. So the last time we had discussed, I had separated out the two incentives. One was for the host lots, which was creating that separate lot with the historic home on it. And then the other one was dimensional variations to specific lots. We had discussed that we were going to go forward with the dimensional variation section. So this is the one that I have for you right now. We do still have the host lots bylaw as well, but we thought that maybe we would do that at a later time and focus more on this dimensional variations as a first step. So I'll just kind of quickly just go through some of the wording in the bylaw. So basically the first section is the purpose. So why are we doing this? Obviously we're losing many of our historic buildings and it happens that sometimes people can't get variances or things like that to be able to do additions to the buildings to make them more functional in our modern day environment. So we want to make sure that we can give people this incentive potentially to keep the historic structure, but then also to be able to add on to bring it up to our modern day standards. So we did give the authority here to the Zoning Board of Appeals, and the reason we did this is because we felt that they already dealt with variations to the dimensional standards. So that's something that's already in their wheelhouse, so we felt that it was appropriate for them to continue this. For the host lot incentive, we thought that that might be more suited for the planning board just because they do obviously do subdivisions, and this would be a type of subdivision. But for this specific incentive that we're talking about today, we had settled on the zoning board of appeals for this draft anyway. So applicability. Basically, this incentive would apply to an eligible historic building. And what we did was we defined an eligible historic building for section 158-2 of the general bylaw. So that's what your commission follows. And so we wanted to make sure that that was consistent with this incentive as well. So again, the definition of an eligible historic building, we took this right out of 158, section 158-2. So it's exactly the same, but we wanted to make sure it was highlighted in this. So basically, you could not use this incentive unless you met one of these requirements, which is an area listed on the National or State Register of Historic Places, is located with any historic district, or has been designated by the Chatham Historical Commission to be historically significant building or structure. And again, this was taken right out of our general bylaws, so you guys are very familiar with this. So special permit priority. We wanted to make it clear that we do want to keep these historic buildings in place on their lot. So we said that this was the priority. However, we could make exceptions and allow this incentive to travel with a building to a different lot in Chatham if they were going to keep their historic structure. So if someone was going to pick up the historic house and move it to a different location, we would allow them to use this incentive on that new location as long as they did keep the historic house. Okay, so what are these incentives? So let's get down to what we're really proposing to give applicants incentives for their preserving their building. So building coverage. We would allow up to an additional 10% building coverage than the maximum building coverage allowed in the zoning district. So we thought that that was a good, could be a potentially good range to allow people to expand on the property with obviously the give back of keeping the historic building. Building setbacks. So allow abutter setback variations of no less than 1/2 the minimum required setback in the zoning district. So we didn't want to be able to vary the front yard setback because we thought the streetscape was very important, but we thought, if people wanted to go out in the back or the side, that would be more acceptable because obviously you want to keep that historic structure, you want to keep that historic streetscape. So that was the goal with this. And again, I'm sure as we go forward and kind of start to vet this with different boards and committees, we'll probably hear some comments and feedback about the size of the building coverage and also the building setback variations. And we expect that. We just wanted to kind of put out some numbers and then hear some feedback on those. So that's the goal there. The special permit process, obviously they'll have to go to the special permit granting authority to get this incentive or approval for this incentive, which we're saying is going to be the ZBA at the moment. But we did want to make sure that the Historical Commission obviously was involved because we want to make sure that this, if we're giving these incentives out, we want to make sure that it is in fact a historic structure. So we're saying here that the Historical Commission must determine that the property is eligible before the applicant can proceed with the special permit procedure. So they'll have to come to the Historical Commission first in order to get that determination of historical significance before they can apply for the special permit. Because we obviously don't want people to be able to use these incentives unless it is a historic structure. So these are the findings down here that the special permit granting authority or the zoning board of appeals right now will have to make in order to grant this incentive. So a lot of them are just the normal ones that they currently go by to make findings. for to grant the special permit. But other ones are, more specific to this historic incentive, the first couple. So we want to make sure that the modifications of standards and requirements authorized are necessary to maintain the eligible historic building on site or as originally constructed, or if it was relocated. And again, I need to work a little bit more on this wording. And then again, the proposed renovation, repair, adaptive reuse, or removal preserves to the maximum extent feasible the historic and architectural features of the building. So basically, we just want to really make sure that, by using these incentives, the historical nature of the building is still in place. And then again, like I said before, these are the normal findings that the Zoning Board of Appeals makes that already are currently in our zoning bylaw. And then conditions to be imposed. So we want to make sure that we have, these specific conditions every time one of these incentives are granted. So the first one is the minimum maintenance requirement. We want to make sure that the property owner shall make every effort to maintain the structural and historical integrity of the subject property. And then obviously a preservation restriction. This is still kind of in debate, I guess, at the moment, but we could require a preservation restriction on these applications when they're approved, just so we make sure that, again, that these historic homes are going to stay historic homes. So we kind of want that extra level of protection potentially. And then another thing that staff had discussed, which I thought was a good thing to just talk about right now, is basically if for some reason the historic home becomes in disrepair and it needs to get demolished for some reason, they can't continue with these incentives. So basically you can't use the incentives to vary your lot coverage or your setbacks in any way. It needs to go back, and you can only go back and use what's allowed under our current bylaw now. So basically, you cannot use these incentives if for some reason your historic structure is in disrepair and needs to get knocked down. It basically is null and void at that point, and you have to go back to what is allowed under the bylaw now. So we thought that was kind of an important thing, and it adds another layer of incentive to make sure you do keep up your historic house. So that's really where we're at right now. And I do know that we're hoping to meet in the future, hopefully in the next couple of weeks, with a member of the planning board chair and then also the zoning board of appeals chair to hear any comments that they have on the proposed bylaw, so we can kind of keep going for that. So I'm here if you have any questions, but I'll hand it back over to Frank now.
Well, thank you very much, Ali. Just one quick question before I forget about it. The last thing you talked about. So you're saying if the house burns down, okay, and if somebody is going to replace it, that they start from scratch. That you don't continue. There's no grandfathering of the incentives which were provided. Is that what you're saying?
Yep, that's what I'm saying. It's this section down
Very
here.
good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So in the event of damage to the historic structure such that the historic structure cannot be repaired, the owner may rebuild on the lot, because we obviously, that's, you
Yes.
want that, pursuant to Appendix 2 Schedule of Dimensional Requirements of the Chatham Protective Zoning Bylaw. So that's our current dimensional requirements now.
Thank you very much. What you really point out, we may have a good idea, the historical commission, but, actually converting it into a bylaw or converting into law, and all the ifs, ands, and buts, become apparent. And we do appreciate your assistance on this. So having said that, again, I think Ali's and the staff are doing a good job in helping us try to put this in some form. We need to get the ZBA and the planning board buy-in on this, and then we need to get some public buy-in. Other than these meetings, we've been talking about it for a year and a half now. So, and again, the planning board, this was originally one of their ideas as it relates, really was Sarah Korjeff's idea of the Cape Cod Commission. And just a quick aside, we are going to be meeting virtually with Sarah Korjeff, I believe next week, to continue to involve her, Sarah Korjeff, the preservation specialist for the Cape Cod Commission, as well as her staff, her planning staff. So we're trying to make this thing work. In a lot of ways, you know, this is kind of first one out of the gate for the Cape, although there are similar bylaws elsewhere in Massachusetts. Does anybody have any specific questions or comments or clarification? While we have Ally? Who's that?
Frank. Steve.
Oh, Steve. Yes, Steve. Go ahead.
I don't have the document in front of me, and I can't scroll back. But you made the comment about there need to be a determination of historic significance before the process begins. Now, if the commission had already determined that to be the case, and then the person who was the subject of that application perhaps was unhappy with a 18-month demolition delay order or something of that nature, you know, that might precipitate them using this procedure. Would they have to go through an additional determination of historic significance if the commission had already made that determination in a prior application?
Yes, that's what we are ensuring that it's another review. You know, it's not every home that we have in the past provided historically significant. This is another review, because as we found out, Steve, you know, we could decide a property was historically significant, you know, 20 years ago, and then there's another review. Things happen, things change. You know, owners can make changes that we don't know about. And so if we're going to be giving this incentive, we want to make sure, and we want to assure the town body and the boards that this is a truly historically significant property at this particular time.
It still is. Okay.
Yeah, it still is.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank
Good.
you.
Thank you.
I appreciate that. Good observation. Anybody else? All right. Now you have a copy of it. I did send it to you. So I would encourage some in-depth reading. And if there's areas where you're just not understanding or need a clarification similar to what Steve, please bring them up, because this is not an easy thing to do in terms of getting a zoning bylaw. Trust me. And I think, as Ally can attest, it's a long process. But if we really think this is potentially something that will help us, I think it's worth the time and effort. And thank you very much. All right. If there's nothing further, we're going to move off. Ally, one more time, thank you very much.
Thank you, Frank. Thank you, everyone.
Okay. And I think we have set up the meeting with Sarah, and you'll let us know where we are with Kathleen and David Nixon.
Yep.
Hey, Bob, you will attend those meetings with me, if you would, don't mind.
I don't mind. I don't have much of a schedule, so it shouldn't be a problem.
Right. So yeah, we all are in that same mode. All right. Old business. Okay. Continuation. Preservation awards. Okay, guys. We have 2 applications from 2019 that we have to award. We'd like to do it this year, and we'd like to have more than just 2. I have looked at a number of properties, but I'm kind of hoping that you, as members of the commission, can come up with some ideas. I thought about 154 Champlain. I think he's done a phenomenal job on that. And if you haven't had a chance to drive by, so I'm following up on that one as a potential application. Again, this is just an application. Another one was 64 Seaview, Silverleaf. Don, I asked you if you would take a quick look and give me some comments?
Frank, I believe it's certainly eligible. They finished the work but the house has been sold, so I'm not sure that the new owner would be interested. We'd have to pursue that.
Well, I know you potentially spend a little time around that street. You think you might want to reach out to them?
I'll be happy to.
Thank you very much. But I would encourage other members of the commission, if you have some other ideas, I'd appreciate it, because I would like to potentially have a virtual award ceremony this year. Okay. Adherence to commission decisions and determinations. This is a meeting which hasn't happened yet between myself and Katie and hopefully Bob on, the idea of, what we do in terms of enforcing decisions, or the idea of the fines and everything else, as well as the application guidelines. Things are getting better because Michelle is working hard to give us better applications that are easy and more discernible for us to make our decisions. And basic bottom line of that is just to make the applicants know it's in their best interest to make the applications simple and clear. Any other comments on that? Okay. Review of rules and regs. We looked at them quickly at our last meeting, and Bob has provided wording to Michelle. I will send it out to you, but the bottom line is we're going to try to have a public hearing. I think it's January 5th, Michelle?
Yes, Frank, January 5th. I'm putting together the legal notice now.
Okay, so this will be a change to our rules and regs, which we discussed. And basically it allows the chairman and the vice chair, two members of the commission, to independently look at an application and a property when there's some question about its age or appropriateness for submission as an application to the commission. And then, so we have a check that it's not just the chairman doing that when Michelle needs some assistance in making a determination. So it's, I think it's positive for us, and hopefully for the applicants too, to try and make things a little bit easier when there is a question of whether or not a property is in fact 75 or appropriate for a submission. When I say appropriate for submitting, is something just a simple maintenance, which really shouldn't be coming to the commission. Any questions on that? Okay, we're keeping Michelle busy, guys, trust me. Stage Harbor Road, Stage Harbor Stage Harbor Road. I think I have a mental block there, right? Okay, the Stage Harbor Coast Guard Boathouse. I guess there's two things I can add on that, is the fact that I think I said it the last time, but I'll repeat myself. The town of Chatham has sent a couple of people and an engineer up to the boathouse, which is currently in Hull. And there will be an engineer's report sometime in the next couple of weeks, which the town will make a determination of whether or not they feel the boathouse is appropriate to be used as the upweller. So, I think you might have read about it in the paper. So we're moving ahead with that. I also wanted to proceed with the Form B, but I'm in discussion with Ms. Donovan relative to the funding for that effort Eric Dre was working on. We did agree, I agreed, that we wouldn't submit it to Mass Historic for eligibility as a National Register property until the town made a decision. But I hope that we can come to some conclusion with the community development to proceed with the Form B. I mean, this is a very historic property and I think, has a lot of impact to the maritime history of the town of Chatham. So whether or not it stays in Chatham or comes back to Chatham, it's something which we should document. That was a speech. Status of current demolition delays. Michelle sent you a revised copy, but very quickly, 24 Salt Pond has in fact begun to advertise as we asked. So it looks like a beautiful little cottage. If somebody could move it, hopefully that can happen. That was the one comment, I guess. The other comment I have is the application on 68 Shell Drive. I did send you guys a number of things. 68 Shell Drive will be before the Zoning Board of Adjustment on December 17th. The application is relatively complicated, but they are proposing to pick up and move the National Register eligible property of the Howes Nickerson property and keep it on it. So it's not going to be an easy application, but I have to give Mr. Chickleone and credit for at least trying to find a way to save that historic home on the property. We'll see what happens on December 17th, but he has to go both to ZBA and as well as the conservation. He did receive a demolition permit for the 68 Shell Drive. This is a technicality in some ways. His demolition delay determination, which we put in 18 months ago, expires on January 7th. If he hadn't pulled a demolition permit for that property, technically he would have to come back to the Historical Commission for a whole new hearing. And to avoid that, he came to an understanding with the community development staff to get a permit to demolish the rear, what's it called, Michelle? The rear
dormer.
The rear dormer. Thank you very much. Brief senior moment there. And in other words, and the process there, again, it's complicated, is he couldn't get permission to demolish the house until he goes to Conscom because the house is in a conservancy district. It's complicated. The negative of all of this is we don't yet have a permit for the Nye family to take the barns, the historic barns. So we still have to work on that, and I am doing that. I think that's it on 68 Shell Drive. Monomoy Theater, stay tuned. Mr. Clark went before the HBDC and asked for a permission to demolish the ancillary buildings as well as the house on Depot. It was denied by HBDC, and my understanding is Mr. Clark, Alexandria Properties, has appealed that decision to the Board of Selectmen. So that's where that is. So nothing's happening yet. He indicated, if you hadn't watched the HBDC meeting, that his intention was to demolish the structure because his future plans do not include the use of any of those properties. But he is saving the Washington House on Main Street as well as the theater. So hope springs eternal, and maybe we will get some kind of theatrical function on that property in the future. Last but not least, the South Chatham Village status of the National Register application. My last conversation with Mass Historic is they're working on it. But the problem with everybody else right now is the issue of the COVID and limiting the amount of time they can spend reviewing these applications. So everything is slower, just like we are. I think that's it. Your chairman has reported. Any other comments or questions from the members of the public? Yes. Yes, sir.
I just want to let you know I'm going to be sending a copy of the Revenue Department's ruling on Historic Preservation Committee money funds. So I will send that out to everybody.
Oh, you mean what we talked about earlier, Don?
Yeah, just so
Oh.
you know what the rules are from Department of Revenue.
Oh, okay, great. Things change. I appreciate it. I guess my feeling is that it could be a worthwhile project, and as long as it's not illegal, then it would be nice to support that group and their effort, because I think that film could be a positive for getting people aware of what's going on in the community, and not just in Chatham, everywhere.
I totally
Any other?
recording and preserving historic properties by film, if they're going to be demolished, is fine, but I just don't think it's community preservation funds that can be used. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, I respect it, Don. I think what they're trying to do is show the history and the process. Yeah, you're right. All three of those properties could end up in the dumpster, and that's an interesting story. It'd be nice to say we win everything. We don't. Unfortunately, I think we win more than we lose, or else why are we doing this? Anyway, anybody else have any comments or thing before we call it a day? Hearing none.
I move we adjourn.
I second, Steph.
Stephanie, thank you very much. If there's no further discussion, Mr. Lear?
Yes.
Stephanie?
Yes.
Ben?
Yes.
Don?
Yes.
Steve?
Enthusiastically, yes.
Sounds like a new chairman talking there. And the chair votes yes. Thank you very much, guys. I appreciate it, and we'll be in touch.
Good job, Frank.
Thank you.